Okay, first exam is going to be set for Thursday, and I have mentioned this a million times. I guarantee I have. This is going to be like something you haven't seen before. There's going to be, I think I'm going to give you 12 or 13 5-point questions. I'm going to ask you to answer 8 of those 12 or 13. So for the short answers, it's going to end up 8 times 5 is 40 points. There's going to be a degree of choice on there. So if you don't understand everything, odds are you're going to have the ability to choose not to answer it if that's what you want. So that's the first thing on this. There's going to be 40 multiple choices at 2 points each. So 80 points. 1/3 of this is going to be written short answer. 2/3 of this is going to be multiple choice. And if you've ever taken one of my exams, a lot of people like multiple choice until they take mine. They're not going to be straight definitions. They are going to be application questions. Some of you, as you are writing your paper, would start sentences with things like, let's say. Almost every single question on the exam is going to start with, let's say. And your names are going to be in there, and you're going to be doing the things that we talked about in the articles. Massage parlors. Contracting for babies, getting pregnant in the Catholic. I mean, you're going to be in there. And if some of you are louder than others, so I kind of have a sense of, your problems, that kind of thing. If I know you a little better, your question is going to be a little worse. If you've been a little quieter, just because I don't know you as well, I'm not going to push the boundaries quite as much on those. But there will be humor on this, and part of this is going to be to work through some of the humor and some of the scenarios. But as you read the articles or you remember the examples, you're going to see in there, you're going to be able to read that question and say, okay, this came from such and such article, or this came from such and such term, and then you're going to have to apply it. So that's what we're looking at. Andrew, I believe I had seen your...
Oh, yeah. No, I was just saying, if you wanted to answer more than...
No, don't do it. Yeah, don't do it. You can write as much as you want to write on the questions you choose. So if you want extra, that's where you got to do it, because that is a hard and fast rule there. And it'll be one of those things where if you're in the 9:30 and it spills over, you can come into the 11. If you're in the 11, it can spill over out here. So you have an hour and 15 minutes. If you need a little bit more, we can work around that. What questions? Just looking at those terms, and I'll take anything. Why don't we go ahead and start with Chapter 1? Are there any terms that you have questions on from Chapter 1 as you take a look at the sheets? And some of these are going to be really, really broad, but anything at all. What kinds of questions do y'all have?
Recall.
Recall. What was a recall election? Because I know we talked about that, and I believe I had even put up a sample ballot, correct?
Oh.
What do y'all remember about recall?
Governor of California.
California. What happened in California?
They had a recall election, and basically because that governor, I don't know what the governor did, but he got sent out of office, right? And then they had a recall election, and basically they put a bunch of different people who wanted to be on the ballot there, and had people like the hustler guy, Gary Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, a porn star, and basically pretty much
Angeline. Yeah, okay, all right. Recall election. The governor, the sitting governor was Gray Davis. The sitting governor was Gray Davis, that's the first thing. And basically he had not done anything illegal, but he had made some questionable policy decisions. So in order to do a recall election, how do you actually get it on the ballot? You remember? You do. You've got to get a percentage of the registered voters in the state to sign a petition. And once that happens, they will have a special recall election. And the gist of it is you're right. There's 2 questions that are on this ballot. So Gray Davis had not done anything illegal, but he had made some maybe bad decisions. They got the requisite number of signatures. What are the 2 questions that are on the recall ballot?
And then yes and no. Do you want them back? Or
okay. Do you want to recall or remove so-and-so as governor, or so-and-so as whatever office that he or she is holding? If you answer no, you're done, because you want them to stay in office. If you answer yes, then what is the second question?
Who do you want?
Who do you want to replace the recalled candidate? And if you remember on this, you're right. Schwarzenegger, an actor, was one. We talked about the Richard Simmons who was on there. We talked about Larry Flint. We talked about Angeline. We talked about a number of people. And what is this an example of overall? The idea that the citizens themselves are making the decision?
A democracy.
Direct democracy. Direct democracy. There aren't a lot of examples in the U.S. of this, but this would be an example of one of those. What else have you got? And ultimately, Gray Davis was recalled. Ultimately, Arnold Schwarzenegger was. And there was no federal recall, but this is done primarily in states, although it's not even all states. What else do y'all have from that first chapter? Anything at all? Go ahead.
Initiative.
Initiative. What was an initiative? Because initiative is actually overlapping a little bit with the recall. What was an initiative? Because this was another example of direct democracy in the United States. Instead of dealing with an elected official, what are you putting on the ballot?
Didn't have to do with like a bill.
Go ahead, yeah.
Wasn't it when like certain people, I forget who it was, but they had to like get together and ask to like pass a certain bill.
Pass a certain bill. They're asking who? The legislature?
Well, they have to like vote on it.
They have to vote on it. The recall, the initiative is like a bill recall, except instead of trying to remove it, you're trying to pass it. And if you remember with the initiative, you're still going to get those certain number of signatures, Greg, like you had said. You're still going to get those certain number of signatures. But what you're doing is you're getting signatures to put a bill on the ballot. Does the legislature ever have any say in this?
No.
No. Okay, if the ballot has a majority yes or more yes votes than no, then it passes. If it has more no votes than yes, then it's killed, and it automatically becomes law, has nothing to do with the legislature. And it's direct because the people are actually the ones that are making the laws. What else do you have from chapter 1?
Hold on. Can it deal with anything?
Yeah, it can. Yeah, it can. I think I had given y'all the example. We were going to try and pass an initiative that was going to require the Ten Commandments to be posted on... to require the Ten Commandments to be posted on public building walls. And I got a promotion because they didn't want me to do it. I believe I had mentioned this. So anyway, but the gist of it is it could be anything.
Didn't you say that was the way that congressmen try to get away when they don't want, like, say if something like a bill that they don't really want to get their hands on?
Yeah.
Then they put it into the public and say, so that way if they do vote against it, well, they can go either way with it because
that was a referendum.
That's a referendum.
The third.
Oh, okay.
When they don't want to pass it because they're scared they're going to upset people, but they don't want to kill it because they're scared that they're going to upset people, they'll pass it as a referendum, and then the referendum will end up on the ballot, and the people will vote it up or down.
Okay.
And the congressmen or the legislators are basically saying, well, if you say yes, we empowered the people. If you say no, if it's a great bill, well, we empowered the people to do this. If it was a lousy bill, well, the people made that decision. We didn't want to do it, but they made the call on this, so yeah.
Okay.
What else have you got from chapter 1? Go ahead, Dan.
111.
111. I believe 111 is actually 112 now, and I haven't changed that. What was 112?
It's the number of peaceful presidential midterm and presidential elections that we've had.
Yeah, it's the number of peaceful midterm and presidential elections in American history. That's all that 112 is. For chapter 1, when you look at those terms, odds are I am not going to ask you for a definition of political science, politicians, or politics. So if you want to scratch those off as terms, and I'll have this list posted today, go ahead and scratch off politicians, political science, and politics, because that's not the most important thing from that chapter. Yes, ma'am?
What about who?
Who?
Is that the Declaration of Independence?
It was the Declaration of
Okay.
Independence. There were 3 who's, right?
Yeah.
What were the 3 who's? There were 3 who's and 1 what? Sounds like Dr.
It was
Seuss.
it was who they were talking to, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
who wrote it?
Oh.
Baby. Who wrote the Declaration? Thomas
Jefferson.
Jefferson was the one that wrote the Declaration. Who was it written about? Written about the king. It was written about King George. Who was it written for?
An ally of some sort.
Potential allies, namely
The France.
France was the one that bought in on this. So who wrote it? It was Jefferson. Who was it written about? It was written about the king. And if you remember, there were all those negative verbs in there. Erected, obstructed, endeavored to prevent, these kinds of things. And then who was it written for? Potential allies. What was the purpose behind writing the Declaration of Independence?
To get help.
To get help?
Help.
Help. There's something even more basic than that. What's that?
To show how we're independent from the British.
Yeah, actually, that's right. It was basically to offer a legal justification for independence. They wrote the Declaration for a legal justification for independence. So those who's and what's really all tie together on this. And if you remember, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness came from the Declaration of Independence. That came from the Declaration. And don't forget about the Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh, yeah.
That was dealing with the Declaration. Don't forget about that.
I thought you only watched it on which com?
There were 2.
Constitution.
There was one with the preamble,
Oh, yeah.
and then the other one was fireworks dealing with the Declaration.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Can you run back the syllable, bro?
What's that?
Can you say what it was again?
It was just dealing with, one was dealing with the Declaration and one was dealing with the preamble to the Constitution.
And preamble is the